This conversation is with a heavy heart as we're dealing with the massacre in Buffalo, New York, and then the massacre in Uvalde, Texas. We're living in the most powerful country on the face of the earth. And you would think that massacres like these wouldn't happen in this country. I mean, it's happening in this country more than countries who don't have this type of power. I don't think we realize that when much is given, much is required. We're just going through in phases and stages. We become so desensitized to the point that we've marginalized every event, everything, as we look forward to this new normal. Wow. I just pray for the family members who are left behind. And don't get me wrong, there's other deaths happening, other horrible situations happening all over the United States, all over the world. As I'm speaking right now, things are taking place right now. Because we see it as normal. It's a part of life. Well, it's not. It's a part of evil. And we need to call evil out. We're looking at this fleshly body and we're fighting each other. Politicians, government, nations. And really and truly, this is a spiritual warfare. There's nothing we can do with this fleshly body but go back to the dust. But we keep using it, yes, inappropriately. And so since we keep doing that, the enemy, the devil, Satan, Lucifer, has played in our playgrounds way too long. I just pray that we come together as a country, as a world, and recognize that we're not fighting flesh and blood. We're fighting a spiritual war. And we're losing. We've lost so much ground, and we're losing so many people. I just pray that you pray for the families that are left behind to pick up all the broken pieces. That you pray that God will comfort them, that God will strengthen them, because only He can. I mean, for some of these family members, hope is lost. And I pray that they realize that hope is never lost when God is in the picture. When God is in the mix, hope is never lost. I pray that if someone has violated your family, I pray that you reach out to God. Don't reach out towards this flesh and thinking that it can fix anything, because it can't. It's in trouble. But God can. I pray that we all have a sense of awareness. We have a sense of urgency. That if we're not going to latch on to Jesus, then we're in trouble. This world is in trouble. America is a Christian nation. And things that's happening in America shouldn't be happening on our watch. But we become so comfortable in being uncomfortable. And so therefore we are accomplices for you. We are part of allowing it to happen. So it's on all of our watch. When we talk about, I don't want this blood on my hand, well, it's on all of our hands. Because we've done nothing to prevent it. Nothing. We're playing games. I just pray, if you listen to this message, that trauma creates drama, part 3, that you tied back into how you're living right now, because that's what this is all about. When you read the Word of God, it's a story showing where you are right now in this particular story. So I pray that you see yourself. And I pray that we become better, not bitter, but better. We know that Joseph is the favorite son, and his brothers are jealous. And so he's sold into slavery. And we know the outcome. Joseph rises from the pit to the palace, and he's in charge. I gave you so many points in the last 2 messages, and so I want to give you several more of this message. But don't forget that every action provokes a reaction. As we talk about trauma, I mean, so many people have been traumatized by these horrific events. And so many are being traumatized by horrific events in their life right now as well. And then we talked about drama. Drama is all over the place. It's birthed out of trauma. And then we talked about everything has a starting point. And everything has a tipping point. I call it sometimes tripping point. And everything has a breaking point. And that's going to be this part 3 message, is the breaking point. But we also talked about that God was with Joseph. And God was with you. God is with you. We talked about God sent Joseph and God is sending you. And then we talked about favor. And we want some of that favor. We need some of that favor. We want to be favored and we want to favor others. It's reciprocal. You give it and you receive it. And then we're going to talk about jealousy. We're going to talk also about Israel stayed too long. We're going to talk about Joseph having flashbacks. We're going to talk about signs. We always want to know if God is giving us a sign. And then we're going to talk about settling for average under the pretense that we are safe. Settling for average under the pretense that we are safe. In the book of Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 3, up under this heading, what I call the starting point, where it all begins, how this all got triggered, the family tree of Joseph, from favor to promise. Yes, the promise of favor. Verse 1 reads like this: Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation. Think about that. I will make of thee a great nation. What is Israel doing sitting up under Egypt? I will make of thee a great nation. How do you have a nation sitting up under a nation? How can you be great if you're sitting up under someone who sees themselves as greater than you? How can you be subordinate? Anyway, you get my point. And I will bless thee and make thy name great. Make thy name great. Remember that. And thou shalt be a blessing. I will bless thee and thou shalt be a blessing. Reciprocal. Yes, reciprocal. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in these shall all the families of the earth be blessed. God is telling Abram, I'm going to bless you to be a great nation, your seed. And I'm going to bless your name to be great as well. And you're going to be a blessing to those around you. But I'm going to curse those who curse you. I'll bless those who bless you, but I'm going to curse those who curse you. Is it possible? Is it possible? Think through this one now, that you're cursing yourself. Is it possible? It's possible. Satan envies the promise that you have on your life. Do you realize that? Satan envies that. He once had it, and he gave it up. The promise you have is that if you confess and believe that Jesus is Lord, and that you believe that God has raised him from the dead, you too shall be saved. That's that promise. Satan can't have that promise, but you do. The promises of God is wedged between his favor over your life and your jealousy in your life. Let me say it again. The promises of God is wedged between his favor over your life and your jealousy in your life. Joseph, 10 brothers, they need to know this. Joseph is a favorite in his father's eyes, but he's envied in his brother's eyes as they place him in slavery for 13 years. That's pain. And this is how the birthing of the breaking point comes about. Israel settled for average under the pretense of safety. Remember that. In the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 8 through 11 is where we are now. The book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 8 through 11. Now there arose up a new king, a new Pharaoh, over Egypt, which knew not Joseph, the relationship that Joseph had with the old Pharaoh. And they're both dead by now. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier. Well, they should be, because the blessing spoken over Abram's life was that you're going to be a great nation. Your name is going to be great. Come on, let us deal wisely with them. This is what the king is saying. Lest they multiply, and it come to pass that they will, when there falleth out any war, they join also our enemies and fight against us. And so get them up out of the land. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Phython and Ramses. If you've ever wondered, why were the children placed in slavery for 400 years? Here it is. The new Pharaoh who had no relationship with Joseph, the dreamer, the favorite, the blessed one. This is generations later, the descendants of Joseph. Here comes this new Pharaoh, and he's saying, hey, we don't do something with them, they'll take us over. Jealousy, envy. You see the theme here? You want to get jealousy out of your heart. Jealousy will place God's promised chosen people into slavery. I don't want no part of that. I pray that you don't either. And then we have this point that I want to make about flashbacks. In the book of Genesis, chapter 42, verse 35, and it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Now, you know the story. Joseph sees his brothers and he knows who they are, but they don't know who he is. And so he starts playing games. Here comes the drama, playing games. Listen to me. Joseph tells them that they're spies, and so he just kind of gets on them about being spies, and they're telling him, we're not spies, we're not, no, we're not. So they go through the whole conversation, if you will. And then what he does is he gives them the corn that they came from because of this famine in the land. So he gives them the corn so they could take it back to their father and feed Israel. But Joseph has the soldiers to put the monies back in their bags. And so when they get back home, they've got this corn and all this money back in their bags. And so they're afraid. I mean, it's like, what's going on here? The king's going to think we stole something. Well, no. Joseph is acting out of this 17-year-old teenager. Now, he's 30 by now, but he's acting out as a 17-year-old teenager who's been sheltered in slavery for 13 years. So he's acting out of his emotions. Yeah, he's 30, but let's be for real. Inside of every prince, there's a kid. Inside of every kid, there's a prince. There's a kid inside of you, and you act out of your emotions. You do things that you know you shouldn't be doing. And here's Joseph. Joseph is setting his own brothers up because of the slavery position they placed him in. I pray that you get this, that you act out sometime as well out of your emotions. Things you shouldn't do, you do because of what's been done to you. Joseph as a slave and Joseph as a prince, we never see Joseph complaining. No. And I think it's because when you walk in promises, you walk completely out of your complaints. Yes, let me say it again. When you walk in the promises of God and the blessings of God, you walk completely out of all your complaining. So if you're a complainer, then you're not walking in your blessings and the promise God has over your life. That might be your problem. But Joseph still has this teenager mindset because let's be for real. He was thrown into slavery as a teenager. And so he's acting out at the age of 30. And to show you how much drama he has in his life, his first son, Manasseh, his firstborn son, he names him Manasseh, and the Manasseh means that for God said he hath made me forget all my toil, all my labor. And he's made me forget my father's house. Wow. And when you name a child a name to forget your father's house, and because of all the labor you had to go through, that's emotional. That's some drama. And then he names his second son Ephraim. And he says, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction, in the land of my suffering. Now, you would think that Joseph is not suffering, but he is, because he's out of place. Some of you are out of place right now. You shouldn't be where you are. So some of you are suffering because you're out of place. You're out of position. You're doing something in your own eyes versus what God would have you to do. And so you're completely out of place. When are you going to get back in place to stop the suffering from happening, to stop the affliction that you have on your life? So we see that at the end of all of this drama, if you will, that Joseph brings about with his emotions, he breaks down and he cries in front of his brothers as he tells them who he is. And so we have to ask ourselves, why in the world is the nation of Israel sitting up under the nation of Egypt? Well, I think the reason why is because they stayed too long. Yes. Have you ever stayed somewhere too long? Somewhere you went and you realized you should have been gone a long time ago? A job that you're in right now that you realize you should have been gone 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago? A marriage that you're in that you know that's abusive, that's adultery, you know you should have left 10 years ago? I mean, where have you been that you stayed too long? Yeah. You're still in school, it's 15 years and you still haven't graduated. I mean, come on, come on. I'm not saying you can't work on it and get your degree. I'm just saying, why are you staying so long? We see Joseph being like a type and shadow of Jesus Christ as he becomes Israel's deliverer, if you will, as he brings them out of a famine land in Canaan and bring them to Egypt, where there's plenty. He brought them out of Israel, but they stayed too long. I mean, there was supposed to be a transition of coming and receiving and returning, but Israel forgot who they were. Yes, they enjoyed where they were and forgot who they were as a great nation sitting upon another nation. I'm telling you, some of you right now have CEO written all over you, but you're sitting up under CEO because you won't move forward. We see Israel as a nation multiplying, and we see the new king, the new Pharaoh, being jealous. And so he puts them in slavery to try to hinder their blessings, try to hinder them from growing and getting bigger and moving forward. He jumpstarts 400 years of enslavement because of his jealousy. When we look at Israel and Egypt, the two nations are like oil and water. They just don't mix. I mean, they have different religion, different cultures, different gods. They're just not in the same path. I mean, they're going opposite direction. And so for Israel to go and park, I call it that they parked. When you go and park in a situation and you stay there, watch what's happening. Either they are pulling you toward their gods, toward their culture, toward their religion, or you're pulling them towards your God, your culture, your religion. Well, we know that Israel wasn't pulling Egypt because Egypt has all the advantages. So Egypt must have been pulling Israel. So they enslaved them for 400 years. Because I truly believe that Israel was supposed to come in and receive the blessing, the provisions that Joseph had set up for them in return. But they stuck and stayed around because they forgot who they were, because they were enjoying where they were. I pray that you're not enjoying where you are so much you forget who you are. If I am not pulling you towards me, then you must be pulling me towards you. Israel was blessed to leave Canaan and escape the famine, but they parked in Egypt and got comfortable, got fat, as they say, fat and lazy. And they got used to Egypt's culture, Egypt's customs, Egypt's religion, which made them weak and vulnerable in their faith and in their favor with God. I pray that you have enough sense to realize that if you're not pulling Egypt towards you, Israel, then guess what? Then Egypt is pulling you toward them. That's what happens here. And that's why they're allowed to go into slavery for 400 years. Egypt was a blessing and a curse all at the same time. Repeat after me. Keep on moving. I'm telling you, keep it moving. You have been blessed in a place, in a position, but you know it's time to move, to get to the next level. However, you have become comfortable being parked instead of moving forward into your destiny. Israel has a destiny with greatness, but they found themselves settling for average. Is that you? Abraham wasn't promised an average blessing. He wasn't. That Israel would be an average nation, that his name would be an average name. No, no, no. He was told that he would be a father of a great nation and that his name would be great. So you can't sit up under another nation if that's all going to take place. Israel was out of place, out of position. They were outside the promise of God. They were spiritually and physically outside the promise, the will of God. So we're told that the famine was in Egypt, and then we're told that the famine was over their entire land. So this must be a global famine. And so surely the hand of God is on this famine. And you're looking at me strange like, Donnie, why would you say that? Why would you say the hand of God? Well, hold up. Because only God is omnipresent. Only God has the power to be everywhere at the same time. And so if this is global, then that's God. And so you have to be asking yourself the question, so why did this come about? Well, hold up. In order for God to get our attention, he has to hit us where it hurts. And for most men, of course, it hurts when you hit me in my stomach. It hurts when you take something away from me, my food. I mean, don't mess with my food now. Or when you mess with my wallet. Don't mess with my money now. Or when you mess with my ego. Yes, yeah, don't mess with my ego now. What? Don't do that. You know that ego is an acronym for edging God out. So we find Israel being comfortable living in Egypt. Think about the pandemic. I mean, think about before the pandemic as being the years of plenty. I'm talking about the pandemic we're in still. And then think about the pandemic once we all come out. We're talking about the years of famine, because I believe there's a famine coming. I told you the last two messages that we are so busy feasting during this season of inflation and a possible recession instead of fasting in the midst of a possible famine. Therefore, we have lost our faith. Wow. And we're losing our favor with God. That's where we are. And we look at the word fasting. Fasting simply means hungry enough to wait for the real thing, not willing to settle for the thrill thing. Yes, for just anything. That's what fasting is. But watch this. We're not waiting. We're participating. That's who we become. We have to all be very careful of allowing our trauma to derail our promise. When you look at the big picture, if we're not careful, we're going to be asking God the question, why do you want us? Why do you give us a sign? There's a parable about the drowning man, and it kind of relates to where we are and what we're doing right now. There was a man in the ocean drowning, and so God sent him a boat. And the man waved the boat off and said, no, go ahead. God's going to save me. And so the man stayed in the ocean for 2 more days. And so God sent a second boat. The man waved that boat off. No, go ahead, go on. God's going to save me. 2 more days pass by, and God sends him a helicopter. And the helicopter throws down the ladder and getting ready to come out and save him. He said, no, get out of here. God's going to save me. 2 days later, the man drowns, and he goes to heaven, and he's standing before God. And he asked God the question, why didn't you save me? And God said, I sent 2 boats and a helicopter, and you refused my grace. Wow. Is that where we are? How much stuff does God have to send before we realize that he's warning us? I mean, we say we are a woke people. Then we need to think like we're woke, because something is here. I don't know what it is, but something is here. When you look at this season, everything seems to be unbalanced, if you will, unchecked, unresolved. I mean, when you have a financial market that's going wild, like girls at spring break going wild, when you have a 40% of baby formula out of stock, something's going wild. And then we experience global supplies increasing at 50%. I mean, when you look at the housing market going wild, when you look at the automobile industry, it's going wild. When you look at the gasoline prices, going wild. When you look at your grocery bill from going to the grocery store, I mean, that's going wild. I mean, who can afford to really eat out anymore? That's going wild. But we are. We are doing all of this stuff. I mean, when you look at toilet paper and you look at paper towels, just going wild. When you look at the Great Resignation, what's happening across this country gone wild. I mean, what's happening to us? And we're just kind of like desensitized to all of it. I went to the restaurant the other day to buy this barbecue sandwich because I heard it was the best barbecue sandwich in the world. And I got ready to give the guy my credit card because I ordered 2 sandwiches, and he says $50. And I'm saying, I didn't want to give him my credit card. I said, $50 for a sandwich? I mean, I added that up. I could take that $50 and make about 10 of those sandwiches, maybe 15, and make about $700 myself. Now, the sandwich was good, but nothing is that good. But that's where prices are. That's where all the prices are. I mean, think about it. If you have a bag of potato chips pre-pandemic, if you have one, take it out, and then go buy a bag of potato chips post-pandemic, and look at how big the bag was with like 50 chips in it. And now you got a bag this small with 15 chips in it. You pay $2 for that bag. Now you're paying $5.50 for this small bag with less chips. When you look at the prices steadily increasing with no end in sight, and your salary is still the same, we've allowed things to go wild. Now we're experiencing mass shootings. And no one's talking about the 21 countries that's at war right now. Did you know that? There are 21 countries where there's a war going on right now, where it's taking place. And then we have this untimely war, if you will, that's happening between Ukraine and Russia in the midst of a global pandemic. And these 2 countries produce the most, watch this, of the global wheat and corn supply. Repeat after me. This is not sustainable. Because it's not. This is not sustainable. Then there's a great falling away from Christianity as our children are gravitating towards other religions and other vices. And no one wants to hear this because, pastors would tell you, well, the church are filling back up again and people are listening online. But let me tell you something. I was always told that you can test some things by the fruit. So if you look at a believer and you see the fruit that they have, okay, I can see that. But look at social media, look at TV, look wherever you look at all the nudity, look at all of the sin that's happening all around you. Your cell phones, your children, your cell phone that they have, that computer in their hands, they're getting so filled with evilness because that's what's being promoted across every airwave. Everyone is showing up. Yes, that's what they're saying. Everyone is showing up for church. But watch this. But everyone is not signing up to be saved. Do you realize that? Oh, yeah, everyone is showing up, watching it on YouTube. But who do you know is signing up to be saved? Because if we had that many people signing up to be saved, this world would be in a better place. That's why I believe that we are on the brink of a famine. Not because of a virus, but because of the combination of this global issues occurring all over the world at the same time with no end in sight. I pray that we're not losing favor with God like the people did in Noah's days. The Word of God tells us to be still and know that I am God. Who do you know that's being still? Who do you know that's being still? I don't know of anyone that's just really being still. As we reflect back to the story about Joseph, Joseph is a prince, and we never see him talking about going back to his father's house and to wipe out his brothers for how they sold him into slavery and blame it on PTSD. We don't see that. Joseph, by the way, names his son Manasseh to let us know he's not going back home. He's put them behind him. We never see Joseph returning like to his high school 10-year reunion to show off of all the status he has and what he's become. No. I mean, just think about it. If you had that power, if you and we had that power, we're going back to that 10-year high school reunion. And we're showing all those old boyfriends, you know what I'm saying? Girls, women, you're showing all those boyfriends what they could have had. And men, we're showing all of our girlfriends what we could have had if we rolled up in our big old Rolls Royce. No. Joseph didn't return home. Instead, Joseph dreamed forward. Yeah, he didn't go backwards. He dreamed forward. Joseph had a mission. I pray that you learn how to move forward in life based on the things that you have in life. And that you don't go back, not to the way things used to be. You just can't afford to. When you think about it, no one, and I do mean no one, wants to drift backwards. But this ship has sailed. And I pray that you have on your life raft, salvation, if you will. I pray that you and your family are anchored in the Word of God and in the things of God during this season of preparation. That's what this season is to me. the season of preparation? Are you using your gifts for the glory of God? Or are you using your gifts to glorify yourself? We don't have a Joseph and we don't have a Moses, but we do have a Jesus who's given all of us wisdom to discern the season that we're living in. I pray that you realize that one day every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. I've shared with you that Joseph didn't go back. And so why are you going back mentally, physically, spiritually? I shared with you that Joseph was a favor, and we know we all want favor. I've shared with you that you have to be careful with jealous people. They will throw you into slavery. I've shared with you that Israel had no business parking in Egypt. They came for a season and they should have moved on back to Canaan. Some of you are staying grounded, yes, staying right where you are, unhappy as you can be, but you parked there because you're comfortable, with your paycheck. You're comfortable with that man. You're comfortable with that system. It's time to move. Repeat after me. Get a move on. Don't forget Romans 10:9. Confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and you too shall be saved. The breaking point. I pray that you break yourself in some areas that you need to be broken and allow Jesus Christ to mend you back together again. Everything has a starting point. Everything has a tipping point. And everything has a breaking point.